Hi, and welcome to my talk on the research usage and social impact of OpenSky's air traffic data. If you don't know me, my name is Strohmeier, and in my day job I work at the Cyber Defense Campus of Swiss Science and Technology in Switzerland. Besides that, I'm also responsible for research and communication at OpenSky. If you have ever requested research data with us, you've probably spoken to me. This talk and the accompanying paper brings together a lot of information that we have on this research usage of our data over the past few years, and I hope you find it interesting. I'm sure you're all quite aware of what OpenSky is. We're a non-profit association for air traffic research, which is based in Switzerland. Today, we want to focus on the research-oriented part here and conduct something of a meta-review of OpenSky's growing impact over the past few years. To do this, we will have a look at 6 different topics. First, we check out the usage of our trusty Impala database, which I'm sure many of you are well aware of. Second, we will do an analysis of all of the data access requests that we've got. We will look at the scientific publications that have been using OpenSky data over the past 6 years. We will take a look at the social impact that is happening more and more with OpenSky data. And of course, related to that, there is the outsized importance of the COVID-19 pandemic this year that has a lot of impact on all of these research usage that I'm talking about. Finally, we will have a look at the possible improvement avenues for OpenSky so that we can support some of these topics and our researchers better. First, I'm sure you're well aware of our guide to OpenSky's Impala shell. If you log in on a Mac, it would look something like this. However, you don't necessarily need to do it on the command line anymore. Our Halcyon members Xavi and Yunzi have developed Traffic and PyOpenSky, 2 Python packages which can use the OpenSky Impala database programmatically for different purposes. So we don't need to necessarily use our Impala shell anymore. But now let's look at the numbers. Who is using our Impala database? Overall, since 2018, when we have records available, 415 distinct users have submitted at least one query. Overall, these have been more than 16 million queries by the 1st of November. If we break this down by year, we have had less than 100 users in 2018, more than 130 in 2019, and somewhat of an explosion in the first 10 months of 2020 with almost 300 users yet. In terms of queries, we stayed roughly stable, but we can look a bit more into this on the next slide. Because if we break this down into quarters, then again, we have a significant growth of users from the first quarter of 2018, where we had 20 distinct users, to 2019, where we had regularly over 50 per quarter, to 2020, where we have almost 150 in the past 2 quarters. On the submitted query basis, we can see somewhat of an outlier in the first quarter of 2018, where some of the OpenSky core members submitted a lot of small Impala queries, and after that it went down a bit, significantly I would say, towards less than 1 million queries per quarter, but latest in 2020 we are regularly back at around 2 million submitted queries per quarter. But this doesn't tell us anything about the demographics of our users, so let's look into that a bit more. Many of you will be familiar with our data access form here. We can aggregate the provided information, and that gives us a much better picture of who is using our data. First, the overall numbers. In 2018, we had 165 data access requests with this form. We had almost 1 per day in 2019, and in 2020 we're having almost 2 per day until November 1st. If we break this down for the 5 research relevant groups that I've identified here, let's start with non-profit and journalist groups. In 2018, we had a handful of requests from both of these groups, and slow but steady growth in 2019 and 2020 towards about 10 per year each. We had similar number of government requests in 2018, however those rose quite significantly in 2019 and stayed about stable in 2020. Government here might also include military authorities, air traffic control agencies and similar. And then we're getting to the academic and education areas, which, as you may imagine, are still the core of our data access requests, and this is visualized here. Education includes anything about teaching, visualization, student requests essentially. 2018 we had actually just a few of those, rising in line with the government numbers in 2019, but in 2020 this has really taken off, more than doubling to 110, 120 until November 1st. As you can see, however, the academic research requests are still dominating, roughly more than everything else put together. From 60, 70 in 2018, we have had more than 120 in 2019 and almost 200 in the first 10 months of 2020. We can look at exactly these academic university research requests and where they are from. This map here shows all of the global academic related requests in 2019, roughly around 100 different universities. They are based all over the world, with the biggest single country being the US, having more than 20 requests in that year from different places, followed by Germany with 10 to 15 in that year, and a bunch of European countries with 4 or 5 each, but also China, Australia, and in general a reach from South America to Asia. So what comes out of all of these data access requests? Well, the most notable public thing are the academic publications that use our data. The gray bars in this area illustrate the overall growth trend again, which has, as you can see, strongly accelerated in 2018. The nice part is that we have data here, publication data, dating back to 2014, so we can take a much longer term view of the development of our data usage. So yeah, in 2018 we had 22 publications, which was 140% more than in the previous year. This trend has then really continued in 2019 with 120% increase, and in 2020, just to November, we have 54 publications counted, already a new record before the year has even ended. And as you're probably well aware, there will be publications coming out for 2020 for still several months into 2021. We can break our analysis down a bit further, taking a look at the different scientific subfields in which OpenSky's data has been used. We identified 4 large recurring themes. One is machine learning, one is air traffic management, one is cybersecurity, and one is earth science. Many of the smaller areas that obviously also there have been subsumed under others. These include research on noise, high performance computing, sensor networks, visualization, among many other fields. From the trends of these subfields, we can see that in the beginning we had a lot of security, in particular in 2015, 2016, the largest field, and certainly this reflects a lot of the original interests of the core OpenSky members and communities at the time. Security is still a popular topic. From 2018 it's been about steady, but it's definitely still there and popular. However, you can see the yellow line, air traffic management, has clearly overtaken in 2019, becoming the largest subfield, and dominated even further in 2020, with now more than 20 publications in a single year. Related to this, often we have air traffic management publications related within machine learning fields, is the red line, and this has started becoming more and more popular over the past 2 or 3 years, and is probably set to surge even further in the future. Earth science, also something that has always been a thing with OpenSky data, from carbon articles to general climate research and weather research, has accelerated over the past few years as well. However, as you can see here already, 2020 has seen one subfield surge from non-existence into second place, and that is the corona-related research publications. So within a few months we already had more than a dozen research publications related to COVID-19. That is really outstanding. So we have a look a bit more closer into this later. So besides these publications and this research impact, there has also been growing social impact based on air traffic data in general and OpenSky's data in particular. One is the growing popularity of data journalism. One example is shown here by Swiss newspaper Blick, illustrating the Swiss airspace quite nicely. If you go to the webpage, you have a really nice data story scrolling through, being able to see basically all of the different airline routes and look into anything that's happening in Swiss airspace in detail. So this is a good illustration, but there are many other out there. If you have a look in our Twitter feed, you will find a lot of these. Besides data journalism, we have more and more so-called local activism. For example, here this watch group of Amsterdam Airport, looking into local noise effects of air traffic and developing even a specific app for this. This app then is using the OpenSky live data. So if you hear an aircraft and you can record the noise from this aircraft and the number of decibels of that noise, and correlate it directly with the OpenSky data and the aircraft, which aircraft it is and where it's flying from and where it's flying to. Beyond these activist things, we also have a lot of what I would call recreational social impact. Several simulators, flight simulators, air traffic control simulators are using live OpenSky data to populate their world, make their flying more realistic. GFS is one, but also well-known X-Plane has now a live traffic plugin that is really popular, and OpenSky here is the only free open traffic channel that you can use to have a realistic environment of the aircraft and the airspace around you. So this is really cool. As promised, we look a bit more into the dominating topic of the year. So COVID-19 and how research using OpenSky's air traffic data has happened. The first requests for data in relation to any of COVID-19 was received in February, beginning of February actually, from China. So at this time, this was in most countries, most Western countries certainly, not really a big topic yet. But from March, from April, when obviously the pandemic spread, we were inundated with further requests. We had 2 per day, and by November 1st, 2020, we counted 130 requests in total. If we break these down into the types of institutions that were asking for air traffic data related to COVID-19, we had 6 from banks and several central banks actually, 7 from governmental agencies such as NASA, 3 from supranational institutions such as the International Monetary Fund or the World Bank, 3 from NGOs, journalists, and of course a large number, a majority, from academic universities. And the number of requests we got from all sorts of people, also private persons, personal researchers, commercial as well, led us to create a new data set because we couldn't help all of these people, and we thought if we create a data set for this, maybe that can help to facilitate quick and open research much better. It is now and has been available for a few months on Zenodo. You can download it there, and more than 8,000 people have already done this. We update it regularly with all of the data that we see for a given month, so we update it monthly for the past month, and includes all of the flights that OpenSky has seen, including origin and destination if we have it, or the first and last seen position, plus some information on the aircraft, of course, as well. And people have used this dataset, but also direct access to our Impala shell as well. For example, Simon Proud has been involved into some analysis of the pandemic concerning high frequency seismic noise. And this is a nice illustration because a lot of the publications related to COVID-19 research are basically using the opportunity to compare the normal state of things before lockdown measures with certainly very different state of the world after many of these lockdown measures happened. So here you can see the change in seismic noise and a relation to the planes landing at, I think, Barbados airport here. Other people look at the direct effects of fewer aircraft in the air. For example, our friendly hosts from Eurocontrol here have used OpenSky data to look at the traffic variations since February in the US. So we can see, of course, there was a large drop into going into April, roughly 80% drop, and a slow recovery later on. And this is also illustrating a lot of the requests we get who really want to follow what is happening in the airspace directly, and how is the recovery going, how are different countries dealing with the pandemic, how are different airlines doing. Finally, we have the certainly much more popular idea of economic nowcasting. Here's an example of the Bank of England and their quarterly monetary policy report, where they took OpenSky data to illustrate, or they looked at the aircraft departures from UK airports, and this also illustrated the differences in movements of people, business travelers, personal travel, and of course this is then a high frequency indicator that correlates with things such as GDP and general economic impact. So after looking at all of these different things that people have done with OpenSky data over the past few years, we also collected a few comments and possible improvements through our data access forums and through communication, informal communication with researchers. What could be done better? Well, the first is the big one and obvious one. We could always have more coverage. More coverage, more redundant coverage is always better. The good thing is that, of course, researchers can help themselves here. They can install a sensor, it's cheap, at their universities, at their house, ask their friends and colleagues, and improve the coverage wherever they need it. However, I still think there's a place here for the community defining target areas which are interesting for research and where we can make a concerted effort to improve the coverage here through contacting people we know, through doing targeted advertising with other communities that might be interested. The second one is accessibilities. If you looked at, for example, our quick guide to the Impala shell, you will see there we don't really deal with Windows users in that guide, or people who are not programmers. It's for various reasons difficult to do much about this, but of course I think the development of several existing tools, APIs, OpenSky and Traffic, but also the data sets that we've developed this year make it more accessible to a large number of people who might not be able to deal with our Impala shell directly. And the third one that we hear generally and have heard for many years, we get a lot of requests for delays, for schedules, for passenger load factors. And sadly, these are generally not available as open source data, and we cannot get them from air traffic communication. So unless we find some sort of donor, some sort of open source or some sort of source that is able to give us that sort of data and to share it with the research community, there's unfortunately not much that we can do about this. With these thoughts, I will end this talk. If you have any further questions, find me on the conference channels or shoot me an email. Thanks for listening, and hopefully we can all meet next year again in person at Aero Control. Thank you.